This is a podcast of hope. What's happening? Thank you for listening. No Quarter Podcast. I'm No 25 Andrew. Thanks for tuning in. I got a special one for you today. I got two segments that I want to throw at you. You're going to listen to two little spiels of mine. First one is a request from a buddy of mine that a listener, he's just like, you always fucking talk about your fish tanks, so talk about your tanks. So in the first section here, I'm going to talk about the tank you're looking at now, my 29-gallon, very, very low cost tank with my very, very cool angelfish in there. Then the second segment, I haven't decided quite yet what I wanted to talk about. But I do have a couple of news feeds, a couple of songs, a couple ideas, and a couple either bike or fish stories that I'm going to throw at you. But just to get it started with this tank, this is my 29-gallon freshwater dirted aquarium. It has 3 angelfish in it. 2 of them are pairs. The paired angelfish means angelfish are actually monogamous, which means they mate for life. Like penguins, they'll choose one and then they'll always have that one, and they'll mate with other guys, but they only like that one. Like they'll we spawned one time, but I'm gonna go back to my guy, which is kind of cool. So the 2 black ones in this tank are my pair. They're both the larger one's the male, the smaller one's the female. They're both angelfish. Petrilium scalare is the Latin name for that species of fish. And then I also have a blue cobalt angelfish, silver angelfish in the back there. He's got a little blue above his eye. He's silver though. This is a dirted tank. I dirted this with just topsoil, definitely organic topsoil. No fertilizers are in here, and then I just covered it with pea gravel, and I got some species of plants growing in this tank as well. Amazon swords, water wisteria. I got a little thing of baby tears, some Rotilla rotundifolia growing in this tank, which is just the species of plants I have going. I found this tank in the garbage. I let it hold water. It held water. It does leak at the very, very tippy top, and I haven't figured out how to. I just keep the water low, so I just don't fill it up all the way, and it works pretty well. I have the top to it. I built. It's the first hood I've ever built for an aquarium, so I like it. Excuse me, and it makes the tank look a little nicer. You don't see any lights or nothing. It's just a black solid box on the top. So I like that. I could have built it a little better, but this works for where it's at. If you see these guys picking at each other, they have established a dominance. There's an alpha fish, there's a beta fish, and there's a zeta fish. Generally, they get along very well. I haven't had any... I've only had one fish of mine that just frickin' owned other fish. They would kill them and eat them and just slowly eat them to pick their fins off until they couldn't swim anymore, and then the fish would die. But none of my fish do that. They do pick at each other, but it's just to show dominance. It's just like body slams and stuff. It's not like cutting off each other's limbs and eating them. So that's my tank here. They're very, very calming. I love the fish tank. It's got a small sponge filter in the back there, very low flow. I do 75% water changes every week, but that's I do that with most of my tanks. I do water changes on Thursdays. But that's just a little bit about the tanks. I do want to talk a little bit more about other topics. If you do like this 30-gallon fish tank, I guess I'll do another one about another fish tank I have, but this is the one. None of these fish have names. If you want to throw a name up for any of these fish, I will probably keep it, because these 3 are nameless. These are the nameless few, and they paired off, so I have a pair. So if they ever have babies, they'll be like, "Hey Mom, what's your name? What should I name my kid?" I'm like, "Oh, I never had a name." So try to name my fish. Hit me up, send it in the comments. I'll name them after you if you do something. But
stay tuned and I'll talk a little bit more about something. Broad-minded people wanted. Do you have an open mind? Are you honest? Are you into seeing different perspectives? Then please apply. Broad-minded people wanted. There's nothing like having a deep conversation with that right person. I love deep conversations about different perspective, and that's the one more topic I wanted to talk about here. Other than my fish, I want to talk about different perspectives, because you guys probably don't have the same perspective I have when I look at a fish tank, but I have a perspective that is also my own, but I'm also capable of seeing it from your perspective and other perspectives as well. So I got probably way too into the idea of perspective and looking at things from different points of view, like an objective perspective means you keep focused on the task at hand. If you get distracted at what's going on, you don't have an objective perspective. You have a very one-track perspective. You go from one thing to another. When if you have an objective perspective, you keep that kind of long-term goal in mind. When you have a dream or something that you're striving for, you have to keep that focus on that bigger picture, to keep that objective perspective in mind, because if you lose that perspective, it's hard to see the big picture again and be like, what am I doing this all for again? So I've found that being something that definitely gets in the way of me. It's hard enough just living day to day and be like, oh, I'm an animal that has to eat, drink, and poo, and then have a goal as well. You're like, oh, but if I do that goal, I might not drink, and if I don't drink, I die. So it's hard to keep all of your goal and then also being a human in perspective. So and the more and more I found myself looking at perspectives, the more and more I found myself essentially like taking a step back from Google Earth. You just zoom out, and then you zoom out, and then it's just Earth, and you zoom out even further, and it's the solar system, and then you zoom out even further, and it's the galaxy, and then it's the Milky Way, and it's so perspective can go anywhere, from looking at a cell to looking at a planet to looking at a little skin cell under a microscope. So you have to have the right perspective. I've been slowly working on the perspective that I go about life with. It has helped me reading through a lot of different people's perspectives and be like, oh, I could just spend my whole life in the military killing people. That's something that somebody has done with their entire life. I forget the general, but in World War II, he owned, I think it was Patton. General Patton owned the Pacific Ocean, essentially. He was so high up in the general list of command in the U.S. military that General Patton controlled everything from L.A. to Hawaii to fucking Japan. So the whole freaking west coast of Australia, Indonesia, the Philippines, Japan, that was all Patton's. If you wanted to see, there's footage of this dude showing up on beaches I said I'd be back, I'm back, and he showed up with cameras and guns and fucking battleships. And I don't think I think that's very impressive, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just his perspective. That's not the perspective that I want going forward, because I don't want to join the military and kill people. But I don't think that's a wrong thing. I definitely think that's a very, very valid perspective. And I love just looking at it and hearing about it, and just not necessarily comparing that perspective to mine, but just comparing that perspective to the vast array. I love seeing the full spectrum of, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do that. This guy's doing this, this guy's doing that. There's so many different ways of living your life. There's just the slice of life. It's your slice of life. Nobody's going to eat your slice. It's yours. So I've gotten really, really far into thinking about the different ways, and I've come to the conclusion, and it's helped me find my center of perspective, is that there is no one way to live your life, and that you can live your life however you want. However, there are a few rules, and like the biggest one is just be nice. Just be nice to people. If you're nice, you are obeying by the rules, and you can do whatever you want as long as you're nice to people. That seems to be one of the biggest rules. Just be nice. Don't hurt anybody. Don't kill anybody unnecessarily. Don't cause harm to people. Don't make people suffer unnecessarily. So the idea that your perspective is all it is, and I've heard people use the word intent. That's all that matters, is your intent when you go about things. So like when I heard comedians talk about it, when they're talking about rape jokes and fart jokes and murder jokes and just terrible worst things of humanity, making jokes about it, their intent isn't to make you feel bad. Their intent is to make you laugh. And I think there's nothing wrong with that intention. So if they're intending, maybe they're just not good at it. If they're just not good at it, then somebody who has a good intention should be like, hey, you need to get better. But just because their intention is wrong doesn't mean that, or that's exactly what it is. If their intention is wrong, then you have a problem. But if their intention is good, then there should be no problem with anything anybody's doing. Smoking pot, telling rape jokes, fucking shooting guns, as long as their intention is something righteous. If it's a righteous, tasteful, I used that word the other day, if it's a tasteful expression of who they are, then there should be no rule against it. As long as they have that objective perspective. If they have that objective perspective of seeing the broader idea of the very end goal, the open-minded end goal of this is what I want, this is what it needs to be. And I can't get caught up in the eating and breathing of everyday life. If I keep that, then you should be allowed to do whatever you want. I think we do live in a day and age where you shouldn't steal to feed your family, but there's a lot of gray area there because we live in a world, because we live in a country, I should say, where everything is awesome. We shouldn't have to do that. I'm not talking about anybody else, not outside this country, but inside this country, I don't think you should have to steal. Especially because we live in a society where we've gotten rid of stealing, because stealing is not necessary anymore, because we have so much. If we have so much and we just gave it all away, nobody would have to steal. But that's kind of an objective perspective. That's kind of an end goal. It's not a relative perspective. But that's the thing about perspectives, is you can go anywhere you want with them, which is really cool. And that's why I'm so goddamn interested. I cursed. I'm sorry. But I think that's where I'm going to end it today. Thanks so much for listening. I really enjoy doing these. I know I haven't posted one in a few days, but I will keep posting them. I will post one now, and this one's going to go up again later. Hope you had a good 4th of July. Hope everything is groovy in your life and you're doing well. I feel better. I feel much more in flow with things. And I'm going to go through my thankfuls now. I'm thankful for a warm bed. Thankful for we live in a very cool part of the country. We had a wicked thunderstorm last night. My house is still standing. Thankful for the country. Thankful for my house. Thankful for my warm bed. And thankful for the country. I love my country. Country is a good goddamn country. We got one of the best in the world. Where it's not an island. If we were an island country, I think it'd be cooler. Islands are so cool. I don't know. And then 3 thoughts. I feel positive, I feel optimistic, and I feel willing to go about this dangerous health, wealth, characterizing thing we call life. So thanks for listening. The dogs of doom are howling more. This is a podcast of hope where we have no quarter. This is No Quarter Andrew signing off. Thanks for listening. Peace.